This meeting up for the public. Thank you, our volunteers still filming for us. Our goal here, purpose today, hear from Britney Jacobs, some background information, help us understand the ambulance district formation and where it's at, and deal with lots of questions on how we move forward there. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you since you know what you're doing.
Sure. So the ambulance district was formed right before my time here, but there's a functionality in Idaho code that allows an ambulance district to be formed in two different ways, either prior to June of 2020 or after June of 2020, and they function differently. It was by advice of legal at the time to form the ambulance district and move away from the private contract ambulance that had been functioning, to form the ambulance district prior to June of 2020 because it allows a little bit more freedom in how we run it.
Do you have the date when they did form it?
It was right before, I want to say like days before June 1st of 2020.
Okay.
I have to go back and look at it. But I know that the formation documents, we got them in right before that. Actually, it might have been end of June. So they would have started on July 1st. So we formed it in June of 2020. So here's a backup. The way that a post-2020 ambulance district is ran, it requires 3 commissioners. They have to be elected in a certain way. They kind of function like you guys do in different districts, and then they make the decisions for the ambulance district.
Now, they're appointed by the, prior to that, I believe that, didn't the code say that they're to be appointed by the commissioners?
So I think that the onset they might be appointed, but they do have to be elected.
So when's their election?
She's talking about.
Yeah, so this is the one that we are not functioning under.
Okay.
Yes,
The
sorry.
ones that we're
Okay.
not.
So that, we decided that we didn't want to function under that one.
Okay.
Because it does require very specific things. We didn't need to create another elected position. We thought that our commissioners could function the ambulance district under the prior to July of 2020 functionality. And in that one, the Board of Commissioners is the governing board for the ambulance district.
Okay.
So we don't have to have a separate elected board or commission in order to function the ambulance district.
And that's the one we're under now, is that we appoint the, okay.
That's correct, yes. And so the ambulance district, the governing board are the commissioners. So the commissioners make all of the decisions for the ambulance district. But where the commissioners had recruited assistants is the ambulance district board. And that board was created in order to provide the insight that the commissioners didn't have with fire districts, ambulance administrative staff, and the like, to give them the knowledge base that they didn't have to fully function an ambulance district on their own. So this board was created. At the onset, they had appointed them. They were functioning with meetings like you would under any public entity. So they were holding open meetings. But where we ran into a little bit of trouble is that they had taken some of the decision making from the commissioners. They were just making the decisions for the ambulance district and somewhat bypassing the commissioners. Now, I've done some research on other counties in Idaho that do somewhat function this way. There is a statute in Idaho code that allows the commissioners to essentially delegate their powers to another entity if they wish. Kootenai County has adopted this function. The commissioners have fully given over their decision-making board powers to Kootenai County. I don't remember the acronym anymore, but it's like KCCSS, something like that. And that entity has administrative staff. They have a building that they've built. They fully function the ambulance district. The commissioners have no say in it. But in our county, we of course are small enough that we can still maintain the commissioners as the governing board for the ambulance district. So the ambulance district board is an advisory board. Because they report to, like, the planning and zoning commission reports to the commissioners, they still have to adhere to open meeting laws, things like that. But they are just that, an advisory board. So all of the decisions that they make are an advisement to the commissioners in order to make the ultimate decision. And so when they are making decisions in their meetings, then they come to you guys for ultimate approval. And so that is the overall function of the ambulance district as it sits today.
Okay, now what about the funds? Or do they retain the funds, or does our clerk retain the funds?
So it is still in, the clerk still retains the funds. So they are still housed here.
Okay.
And Tammy, I believe, oversees them. But what they have the ability to do is utilize the funds in accordance with the budget that's been approved by the commissioners.
It's my understanding, I've been talking with Bruce a little bit, and he was gonna bring their finance guy up. But it's my understanding they have all their ambulance money in a separate bank account from the county in Pinehurst.
So it shouldn't be in it should be in a separate bank account because they are a separate entity. The ambulance district is its own separate entity. So it's not in the county's general fund by any means. And where it is housed, it's still under the county's control. And I know that Tammy has, she has been able to see it and function with it.
So we used to have an ambulance fund, that wasn't in our, current expense, but it used to be just the ambulance. We couldn't have kept that, since they're their own district now. to be
No,
managed.
so prior to the ambulance district, it was a separate company, it's a private company that we contracted with. And then we just paid them out of a general fund. But now it is a county fund, but it's kept separate because the ambulance district is a separate, district, separate
Okay,
taxing
okay,
district.
because of it's being a district,
Mhm.
okay.
No, they're separate taxing district, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So you believe that Tammy can still see all their funds?
To my knowledge, she can, yes.
And those are the reports they're supposed to give to us as well, that, as a governing board, to see their expenses and finances.
Yeah, so,
But there was a question that she had posed that, because she didn't believe that the county then did their audit, which was a question that I needed to bring to Ben that I hadn't gotten answered. But, and she had believed that it was a separate, the auditing was a separate thing, but that I still have not received an answer.
No.
Okay,
We don't, we haven't seen their expenses. Are they supposed to bring us their expenses before they do it, so we approve them, or do they approve their expenses?
sorry, Jeff, they do email a monthly expense?
after they've made them.
After they've made them, okay.
Okay.
So,
But yeah, we
So
are
those
supposed
are-
to get them.
Yeah, and so those are normally put on the consent agenda because they are utilizing the funds under the budget that's already been approved by the commissioners. So they're putting them under all of the line items and budget items that they've requested and been approved for by the commissioners.
So should those expenses come before us before they approve or pay them?
I don't believe so because they're still utilizing them under the budget that's already been approved. So they're just confirming with the commissioner that those funds are again being utilized for that
except
purpose.
in practice, what seems to be happening is, like, I know they've retained secretarial administrative help. I don't know that that was in the budget. I know that they retained a mechanic last month, and I don't believe that that was something new, so I don't think it was in the budget.
So I think that they have taken the allocated funds for administrative staff for the budget on that, but for the one individual, the clerk or secretary that they've hired, as far as the mechanical, I believe that they are utilizing funds that would have gone towards maintenance for them.
Does, Tammy write the checks?
No.
So I see in their budget, and again, I'm fully, I don't wanna sound like I'm attacking the ambulance. My goal is to understand it well
Mhm.
enough to help them out. Are they allowed to hire like these positions without the board being a part of those contracts?
No. So the commissioners will ultimately sign the contracts for anyone that they contract with, and that one was signed by the commissioners.
Which one was?
For Lori.
For Lori?
Yes.
But what about this new one with the
That
mechanical?
one hasn't been drafted yet. I'm still working on that one.
You're working on
Yep.
that one. So they approach you to do that.
Yeah, so they had asked me to work on so back up. One of the issues that they've recently had is ambulances breaking down because of lack of maintenance. And so they have wanted to implement a specific individual to keep that from happening. And so at their last meeting, they had asked me to draft somewhat a similar contracted position so that we have one individual who is designated to maintain the ambulances so that we don't run into this problem.
And that wouldn't be a board decision here, that would be their decision?
So-
Because it's within the budget?
No, so like any other contract that they get into, it would be an advisement for them to review the contract and then send it to you guys as a recommendation to sign.
Okay.
And these folks that they're hiring, which is not at all a problem, my concern is, are they bonded? Are we hanging out liability wise? Are they,
Sure, so I think that the individual that is, well, of course, Lori, it was just an administrative position, and of course she had other positions where she had engaged in open meeting laws and administrative duties, but the individual who is doing the maintenance, I don't know that for sure.
I asked him, he's not.
Okay.
So I think my question to you is,
Sure.
should he be?
I
Where's
think,
our liability as a county?
yeah, I think that if we're putting someone in charge of a mechanical product of the county, I think that our duty is likely to put someone that we know is an individual who can upkeep that in matter that's in compliance with the standards of.
So it'd be okay for us to require to be bonded and insured to
Mhm.
utilize that
Yeah, so
position
again,
just for.
the contract is ultimately your decision, and if either the individual or the terms of that contract are not something that you guys take that recommendation and approve, then you can certainly send it back. Either send it back to them to find someone new or implement a different person or different terms.
So the maintenance one probably should have some insurance,
Yeah,
some kind of personal liability or something to cover.
right, yeah, so some, and so do I have that?
Now, if he's just doing oil changes and things like that,
Yeah,
is he
so-
doing steering or is he doing the whole thing? Is that,
There were some specific activities that he was planning on doing that were within his wheelhouse essentially,
okay,
but that they would utilize a different entity in order to do more advanced things.
okay,
But I haven't finished drafting that.
okay.
So
So
that's
we'll know
something we
more
can-
about the whole thing when we get the,
Yes,
Okay.
and I certainly can send you guys the draft of that
okay,
contract. I am going to have it prepared and ready for their next meeting on the 16th, so I can copy you guys on that.
And does the administrative position or whoever's spending the money and writing the checks, do those need to be bonded?
So the person that is spending the money and writing the checks is, man, I forgot his name. But I believe he
Brains.
is, yes.
Yeah.
And so I believe that he is an accountant or a CPA.
I
Something.
don't.
Okay. I think that he has some sort of position, but ultimately, yes. I don't believe that Lori does any of that functionality.
So the people writing the money, the checks and that should be bonded?
I think they should have at least some sort of certification or title.
Do districts provide any type of that for their people? The bond, the insurance or the,
So, yeah, we get into the discussion about whether or not they are a county employee or a contracted employee, wherein they fall under the county's insurance. It could be argued either way. But if we write it into their contract, then that's one thing, that they either hold their own liability or they're under the county's.
Yeah.
But that's certainly just
because it'd be
a
redundant
decision.
to do it if they are covered under the entity.
Yeah,
then
so
they'll have to provide
this
that first.
position specifically is interesting because it's technically a county entity, but they're a contract employee. So there's an
Yeah.
argument to be made either way. But it can be just written into their contract, whether or not they are, like, if it specifies you are not a county employee, you need to have your own insurance and liability, or that you would fall under our insurance.
And we can check that with iCramp and see if that, okay.
Well, does anybody else have further questions? I'm still taking in what we just said and trying to think of for my next question here. When the ambulance board decides to buy ambulances and things, those are decisions that ultimately come to the commissioners for approval.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be required to do the 3 bids and all of the state procurement type rules. Okay. I understand that they've also retained an accountant to, is that a contract? Do we have a contract with their accountant?
I'm unaware of that, but I can certainly put on the notes to discuss with them.
That one name that was on the list that we're signing payments to, I believe they said was doing their accounting. So the county wouldn't do their accounting? I mean, that wouldn't fall under Tammy?
Tammy, when it was formed, had not done their accounting. I think that there was maybe some confusion on whether or not she would. But again, I think that when it was formed and the district board was formed, I think there was some miscommunication on certain elements, and if that is something that we need to move back to the county, then we certainly can. As it's currently functioning, I think it's usable and within the code with your ultimate approval at the onset of the budget and then utilizing the funds within that budget. But if it does need to come back to Tammy ultimately, we can certainly move it in that direction.
So then it would be running through here again.
But they do have an accountant, but we don't have a contract with that accountant right now.
I am not aware of that.
Okay, so that's something that needs to be addressed.
And you got the name of the accountant?
was Mary Bren, was on those lists.
Okay.
What was her name?
Bren, B-R-E-N.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if we have a problem, I'm just asking you, how do we fill these gaps?
Yeah, that would have been another contract that would have come through the commissioners.
Are you aware of any?
And, I don't recall any.
Okay.
And this has been running this way for the last 2 years, right?
Yes. So we kind of changed the structure of it when we thought there might be a bit of an issue with the way that decisions were being made, and that was relatively recent. I want to say back in the summertime, so about a year.
About a year. And what did you change at that point?
So I had advised in the board to make their decisions an advisory decision. There was a little more delegation of the decision making from the commissioners to the ambulance district that probably wasn't the most correct, but ultimately the commissioners still approved the budgets for all the things that they did, but just not formally. So we moved more to, they send all of the documents to the commissioners to ultimately approve rather than being signed off by the district.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting those documents, Tracy? You're getting
Yeah.
I don't think that we've had
Not a
many
whole lot,
lately,
but-
yeah.
But I've seen, last couple months being in, I did see like the emailed approve, here is our expenses for the month, or,
Okay.
The ambulance district right now is ultimately set up pretty well. And I think they have some long-standing contracts currently. So you guys wouldn't see many of those, but if there is either a new position or a renewal of contract, then that would come through you guys.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions before I open it up for public comments and questions as well? I'm sure I'll keep thinking of some. this is so new to me, so.
Yep, and it's still new to the county, so,
It's
like I
because
said,
they
it's
are a
really very new.
separate taxing district, that's why their funds are separated from the counties.
Now,
Mhm.
just one more thing, do they have contracts with each of the fire districts?
That I don't, my understanding of it is that they pay the different districts a certain amount of money, one for the housing of the ambulances and then utilizing their personnel for EMT services.
Okay.
Whether or not that is, I imagine it's in contract form, but I actually don't know for sure.
Okay.
Okay, so we just haven't seen those yet, so.
And that might be one of the longer standing contracts that were created at the onset.
Okay.
Should come to Casady.
Could you make a note that I'm gonna ask the ambulance board if we could review their contracts, just so we can get caught up with what contracts they currently do have, so we're clear on what is and what may have fallen through the cracks. Okay, well, I'm gonna continue with our questions, but I'll open it up for the public as well, if we have any questions or comments. Mr. Beener?
I have been here for the whole time. I know mostly what happened on this ambulance district. It was formed before July 1st, 2020. And they were appointed as a full-fledged board with all the powers and duties that came along with being a full-fledged board. They ran like that until 2021, because 2021 budget year, they did not taxes because they didn't have their licenses. 21, 22, they did taxes. They actually had their own public hearing for the budget that year. I got involved, and when this was set up in June of 2020, which I have a recording of it, that legal gave them the advice to set it up this way as it being a full-fledged board that can do anything they wanted to.
Without the commissioners?
Without the commissioners. So for the first year, they were doing stuff, of course, they weren't spending money that I know of, I think they were spending some, but anyway, without any approval of the commissioners. Then it became 22-23. They decided, that's when they started taxing us. EMS went away in October of 21, or 22. And, they had their budget hearing. I raised a concern with the past prosecuting attorney that these guys were not the board. They couldn't have the budget hearing, and they had to have a meeting at the end of September for the commissioners to approve the budget. And getting back to, I believe where the problem lies with this part of it is there's two different codes for an ambulance district. One before July 1st, one after July 1st. You get to, I think I grabbed the wrong sheet. You get to the code of, it's all under 31, Title 31. You get to the code of, excuse me if I take a minute. 31, 39, 11, that's where it becomes a commissioner's, full-fledged district on its own. In that section, it says you can put the money in an outside of account. Before that, the county treasurers will establish your service fund account. The ambulance district is a component of the county, Shoshone County's budget. That's how it will be reported. If you look at the smaller counties that have done this, that's what they put it on. I talked to the auditor, and it's a component of the county. It's not a separate taxing district, it's a component of the county. So the money should be in the county coffers. And Lori is the one that's doing accounts payable. And I really disagree on whether they can spend the money with nobody being bonded, and then the commissioners approve it after it's been done. It needs pre-approval if that's what they're operating as a advisory board. This has been a mess for years. I don't want to see the ambulance go away. It's not that, but there's codes that have to be followed to keep it clean. If it wasn't for me, these guys would have been out on their own spending the money, and years from now, everybody would have thought they were doing it right. It was a legal district.
Okay, so in your mind, it's not a separate taxing district, it's a component?
It is a component. Like if you go back to the audit that was presented in June, Tony, the auditor, actually brought it up as it being a component too, that somebody was gonna have to audit those funds, and in the budget, there's nothing in there to pay for this audit.
Oh, for the ambulance?
For the ambulance.
So they'd have a separate audit than our auditor?
It would be a component of our audit, if that makes sense to you.
So it would be a component of,
Shoshone County's budget,
for the auditing of the ambulance district.
yes.
But we don't have that currently.
It's not in, this is the first year that has to be audited. 21, 22 has to be audited this year. And last thing I think I have is I have a real question, and this came up at the budget hearing, is they have legal fees, legal account. I think it's $12,000, and they've spent $3,000 of it. To me, legal is just an advisory board. The only legal they need is your legal. It should be the county's legal, not paying out a separate for attorney's fees.
I don't charge or assign any fees to the work that I do in the ambulance district.
So they're spending it somewhere else?
Our county or our office doesn't get paid from them.
Right.
Yeah, they're a county entity that we don't bill for.
So Since she's taping that, I wanted to make sure, so she's saying that our county is not receiving those legal fees. So Matt, do you have any idea where the
No,
money's
I
going?
don't. If you, it's highlighted, like I said, it brought it up at the budget hearing for this,
3,000.
and it was left in there. You can see there's like $12,000 budgeted. They did, in the past, they've spent money on legal fees with a firm out of, Idaho Falls or something.
So, while we don't get paid from the ambulance district itself, it of course would come from the legal aspect of the county that comes to our office. It's still part of all of our county civil would be under that. Whether or not the county has allocated more funds because of the ambulance district board being formed, I don't know.
Okay. So that
Whether or
would
not
be-
it was, of course, done in there and, they're utilizing those fees to supplement the ones that would have been added for legal, work because of a new form of district, I don't know.
So I need to ask
Yeah.
them about the legal fees, how they're spending that. Matt, did you have any questions or other comments you
I
wanted to add?
just was gonna show you on the, where it says on the post, or past July 1st, where it says you can put it in a private account. I don't know if you're interested, it'll take you a minute to find it. but-
Sure, and we can come back to you, you don't have to, you know. So Brittany, any comments based on, what he's suggesting it's not a separate taxing district, it's a component, does that language make sense to you legally? What are you thinking?
I think it functions more like its own separate taxing district than it would any other one. But if Matt has a different opinion, then it is a different.
So you don't necessarily see it that way?
So was Ben involved when we were transitioning to this district for the ambulance, or?
Ben?
Yeah, or was it, I don't know, Keisha or Ben, or,
What's
but was our legal involved in this?
Yeah, legal was definitely
process?
involved in forming the ambulance district, whether or not it was Ben or Keisha, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Ben
Before my
told me
time.
it was Keisha.
Okay,
Yeah.
Matt?
Excuse me, in the meeting where they said that, they got legal advice on how to set it up, Hanson asked me, said it was Ben.
Okay.
Okay, I asked Ben, and I think he said he was involved, but that Keisha did the original work, so.
That statement was made in June of 2020, so that's when they were setting the board up.
Okay, well, all right. This concern that the money should be in the county money and not in its own taxing. I think my concerns right now are, and again, I'm just looking for ways to fix them if they're true, so I need you to tell me if I'm worrying about something I shouldn't. Their accounting is being done, but we're not sure how the contract works with that. They're spending money, but we don't know if they're bonded or insured. Their money is in a separate bank account from the county.
That part I don't.
Is there any logic in putting it back with the county money, or is that inappropriate? Or?
I think it certainly could, but I think it obviously needs to, because it is its own district, needs to be kept separate from the general fund.
Separate from the general fund. If it were in the counties, wouldn't our auditing be covering it and Tammy be covering it? And
yeah, I just don't understand with it being its own district, how
I don't either.
it can mingle with
That's why
the
we
county
brought
funds,
all the smart
so
people
I
here,
think
so.
that's what we
Yeah, I
need to
mean, there
look
has to be,
into,
of course,
because there's a
some
reason
sort of
why,
separation.
um,
Yeah.
Now, is it a trust account or what, what kind of account would it be?
Sure.
Okay.
Handling of district funds, the tax receipts collected by the county as provided for in section 313916 Idaho Code and other funds shall immediately be paid over to the county treasurer, to the treasurer of the ambulance service district, who shall deposit the same in a bank and be handled in a manner prescribed by state depository law.
That's after July 1st.
This is the after July 1st.
So that's not
which
what it was
doesn't
for.
apply to us.
No,
Right.
no, that actually spells it out to put it in a separate bank account. The other one, 31, the first part doesn't.
Right, so it doesn't give us guidance on how this one is.
On what to do with the
Yeah.
ones before. So in your mind, either way could be appropriate? And do you have a best practices suggestion?
I think in order to maintain the separation, the way that it's currently functioning is appropriate. Keeps it separate from the county's general fund. And the only problem is the auditing. Either there needs to be an allotted budget for auditing within the ambulance district, or we move it over so that auditing is completed by the county. And either way, I think would be appropriate.
But we need to come up with some way to audit. And it's, Matt, I think you made a comment that it needs to be audited this year.
Yes,
What did you base that?
Tony's statement and code. The-
Whose statement?
Tony, the Hayden Ross, he's our auditor,
He's our
Oh,
county
the
auditor.
Okay,
which I do have that on recording too.
I'm just trying to clarify for
Yeah.
them.
Which I'm pretty sure Tammy will be on top of this because she works with Tony closely, and I'm sure she had to get advisement on.
Yeah,
So
in one of the
setting
meetings,
these
she
up.
had indicated that the county would not audit it. So, I mean, at this point, with the way that it currently functions, it needs to be audited separately.
But they didn't budget for an audit.
I'm not sure that I've seen the budget for an audit.
But an audit needs to be done, so we have a problem we need to solve there probably. Okay, well, that's all right, at least if we can identify the challenges,
And work through them.
do you see us, do we need to close any gaps liability wise? I mean, not having insured or bonded folks, we've talked about that's a possibility.
Yeah, certainly in contracts, we need to identify whether or not they are insured and bonded by county or themselves.
And Matt's, I think you made the statement that you believe that Lori,
He's doing accounts payable.
and I don't know Lori's last name.
Teeters.
Teeters is doing accounts payable.
That's what was said in the meeting, that you took over that from Brands.
Oh, she took it over from Brands?
Yes,
So Brands is no longer,
he's still his treasurer, but, she does because she's getting paid $800 a month, that it's more than just taking minutes, she's doing accounts payable too.
Okay, so that,
And who signs the checks?
I don't know who signs them, probably Brands, but
Is it
probably,
Rand's? Okay.
she probably
Brands
fills them
usually
out
signs
and
the
pays
checks,
and
yes.
has it
so
signed.
in your mind, would that mean that we need to have her insured or bonded?
Now, how does that work with, if they're just an advisory board and he's a signer on the account? I don't understand how that works.
so, because they are utilizing the funds in accordance with the way that the commissioners have approved their budget.
Okay.
Rather than bringing every check to you guys to sign, he's been able to sign the checks on behalf of the county,
Okay.
in accordance with the budget, that's right.
Okay. So it's in accordance to the budget.
Yeah,
As long as they're doing that, okay.
yeah, and then they provide the monthly budget to you guys in your consent agenda.
And we approve their budget during the budget cycle. Thank you. Sorry to ask such basic
Yeah.
questions,
It's okay,
but
no, no
Tracy,
worries.
is this kind of the same way that the snowmobile?
I have
Does.
no clue. All I've ever seen come through from the snowmobile is the bills that we pay through their fund here.
Okay, so we paid, okay.
Yeah, we do have a snowmobile fund, but they're not a taxing district.
Yeah, that's right.
okay. All
This is
right.
taxing district that I need to
Matt, did you have any
educate
further
myself on.
question or comment?
There's a reason it's functioning.
Well, on this resolution that was done for the ambulance district, it
Which
actually,
one?
the resolution.
What was that one?
22nd of 2022.
Okay, wait, which month?
June,
June.
excuse me. I believe it's not right because it says the Board of County Commissioners, the agreement with Board of County Commissioners, they may expend funds for such purposes related to the services of the Shoshone County Ambulance District as it sees fit, subject to compliance with the budget of Shoshone County. I believe anytime anybody spends county funds, you have to be bonded. This is above or below what code says. There has to be a bonding requirement.
And you're saying
So
would that be for the,
Whoever's spending money.
whoever's signing the checks?
I believe so.
Whoever's signing them's gonna be responsible, right?
Yeah.
Okay, would you mind looking into that a little bit and giving us
Yeah.
an opinion? So thank you, Matt, for bringing that up. That is a good question. And I think we all want the ambulance district to flourish, and we all want an ambulance, so we just need to smooth out these parts. We've got some good volunteers.
Yeah, we got a good board.
We've just got to, but
Very
they have
knowledgeable.
had some of these questions for me as well at the last one, and this would be a good time to mention to you while I'm thinking about it, that Tracy and I have decided to swap. She's gonna put me on the ambulance board as the regular reportee,
Okay, okay.
although she may be attending because she has an abundance of interest in this issue. So I'm gonna be the rep to the ambulance board, and my goal is to work between you and them and the board and try to figure out how we plug these holes. Matt's brought up some good questions that we need to get answers to make sure we're all on the same page. It sounds like there may just be some different interpretation of code on a couple of these.
Sure.
So if you would mind sending me the code that you think applies, that I could just, so I could at least read it and try to understand what these discussions, and Matt, I'd ask you the same if you'd be willing to share anything you can that would help me inform myself on this, because my goal is to try and fix the weak links. Oh. Any other comments or questions from either commissioner?
No, I have to
This
follow
time,
up
I
something
think
with
we're good.
legal.
I would like to thank you for taking the time, and I appreciate your work on this.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I will be at the meeting on the 16th, and I'll have that contract ready, and then I'll see you guys at 3 o'clock.
At 3 o'clock.
Yeah, for a
Okay.
different topic.
Well, all right, okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
guys.
much. The meeting is adjourned.